All right, I'm here talking with a guy I'm calling Rabid Rack of RackAttackGamer website. And Rabid Rack, the topic today is a hot one following that church shooting in White Settlement, Texas, where parishioners took out their guns and shot the gunman dead before he could do any further damage. Two people were killed in it, including the gunman. So, what does this say about the debate pro and con gun control? What do you think?
Well, for me, there's no debate. The debate was settled 200 some years ago when it said shall not be infringed. So for me, there is no debate. Anybody, any government official that is looking for gun control, that's just a euphemism for infringing upon our rights that they have no business infringing upon.
Yeah, but I know you're big on no infringement at all, no controls, but what about the argument that, should people be allowed to have atomic weapons?
Well, yeah, this is what we got into before. I mean, you spoke before, and this is the argument that goes along with, say, abortion, where 90 some percent abortions, 99% of abortions are casual sex, get pregnant, abort, casual sex, get pregnant, abort. So when I talk that I'm anti abortion, I'm talking about that 99%. I'm not talking about the 1% of rape this and incest that and
But
everything
should
else.
there be provisions to allow for that in those types of cases?
All I'm saying is 200 years ago, there was something written and it said shall not be infringed. And that's
All
what I
right.
stand
Just
by.
100 years ago, no infringement, there was no degrees of infringement. But does that translate today into allowing people, civilians, to have any kind of weapons of any kind of power that they want, including
Now,
atomic
see,
bombs?
you want an interview, and what I'm going to give you is a discussion or a debate. So we're going to go that route. But
We're,
anyway, my
we're
answer is
debating.
this.
So give me your counter to that logic.
Well,
You
here
know,
it is.
why should civilians be allowed to have atomic bombs in their basement?
Well, I ain't exactly saying that 100%. I will go with that argument if you want, just to make it a little bit
Saying no
facetious. And
infringement. You're saying no degree of infringement.
let's go back 200 years ago. 200 years ago, the farmers in the field, the regular factory workers, whatever they had back then, had muskets.
Yeah.
And so did the military. Also, people back then had cannons and other weapons of war that were exactly the same as what the military had. Maybe different varieties, maybe whatever. Maybe the military might have had a little bit newer ones or a little bit sharper ones, or but the military and the civilian population had the exact same weapons.
So
Since that
from
time,
that you're
oh no no no
extrapolating
no, I'm
into
gonna.
allowing no barriers today.
Since that time, the parity has shifted a great deal. The military started getting tanks. From tanks to, it was helicopters,
Yeah.
helicopters to jets, jets to bombs
Yeah.
to and now we're at where the point is where the military has nuclear weapons and all sorts of fangled equipment, and regular people only have semi-automatic rifles, and even that seems to be becoming a problem. Semi-automatic rifles. Well, in regards to anything with the Second Amendment, I always go back to my same old standby. Unless you understand that there's a cabal of the super rich people trying to control the world, you're not going to be able to make an argument about anything. There is a new world order. The new world order wants disarmament worldwide so it can take over and impose its will upon everybody.
So you're saying then that because 200 years ago the parity there was parity between civilians and government and military, the same parity should exist today, including
I
again.
think I think at the very least, the way it is now is not as bad as what it could get. And what these politicians are going after, the Democrats almost exclusively, are going after more and more and more infringements, every corner, everything. All this is chipping away. It's a chipping away. It's a boiling of the frog type of thing where they take a little bit here, people gripe, They accept it eventually. Then they take a little bit more. People gripe. They accept it. And it's going on and on like that for quite a long time now.
All right, but you're avoiding the main point of contention here of whether there should be any limits on weaponry for civilians.
Well, I don't believe the government should stick its nose in where it don't belong. The government, you're talking nanny state government. I'm not talking that. I'm talking the government should be there to protect the people from foreign militaries, from invasion, and a couple other things that the government was set up to do. I don't think we need a nanny state where the government has to go and control everything. Like New York governor wants to control whether you can drink Coca-Cola or not. I mean, this is ridiculous.
Okay, you're talking about the absurdity on the other end of the spectrum here. So you're really avoiding the main point of contention.
Do I believe that there should be limitations? No, I don't believe there's already built-in limitations. It's called economics. People can't afford nuclear weapons. It's also called knowledge. People are people going to be able to build nuclear weapons? Are they going to have the materials to build them?
Okay, how about machine guns, rocket-propelled grenades?
People do have access to those things. People have access to those things.
You should have access to that.
I said people do have access to that. It's a very long loophole thing where you got to jump through a million hoops, but people can get machine guns and so forth.
And you're okay with that?
Yeah, fine.
You know, in today's complex world, unsafe world, an increasingly unsafe world, that doesn't make you even a little bit uncomfortable. If there was especially if now with the divisions in society, with the emphasis on defending yourself, et cetera, that we drift more and more towards a stronger and stronger, more powerful weaponry. That's all right with you?
It's better, in my opinion, than stronger and more powerful government, and exclusively more powerful government as opposed to people. Governments are notorious for killing their own population. There is, and I can't bring it up now. I wish I could do it. I tried to set up my camera so that I can show you documents and stuff. It don't work. But there's a University of Hawaii study. It's on the University of Hawaii website where a professor did a study about how many people were killed by their own governments in the 20th century. Yeah. And then he took it beyond that from before that. The amount of people killed by their own governments in the 20th century was 262 million people. So add that to what came before the 20th century, which was something like 600 and some. It all comes to about 888 million people killed by their own governments from all recorded time. Now, that's near 1 billion people killed by their own governments. And what you're saying is we have to limit weapons, we have to limit this, we have to limit, or at least you're trying to make a case for that. Well, I'll tell you what, I think out of all the shootings that have happened in America over the last 30, 40 years, you're not going to get nowhere near a billion people.
All right. First of all, I'm not calling for disarming the population. You know, I believe in the Second Amendment, but again, the question is, should there be limits to it? And you're saying no limits at all. Have any kind of
no, because I do not trust the government. I don't trust. This is what you call a foot in the door type thing. You're saying a foot in the door. I say economics should take care of the limits.
Or the slippery slope argument, right?
Slippery slope, foot in the door, whatever you want. Inch a mile, yeah.
Yeah. Well, do you think that there should be at least more training, at least obligatory or otherwise, before you're able to own a weapon? Should there be more checks and balances?
That would be nice. I wouldn't make it a requirement.
Background checks?
No.
No background checks?
Nothing.
So if you're a raving lunatic who just got out of the asylum last week, which some people may want...
What are you doing out of the asylum if you're a raving lunatic?
That's all right. Huh?
If you're a raving lunatic, what are you doing out of the asylum? Or if you're a dangerous criminal, what are you doing out of prison?
They're released through technicalities from insane asylums.
Well, then maybe that's the area that we have to work on with more laws instead of
mainstreaming. No, I agree with you. You know, the NRA uses the argument all the time that current laws should be more strictly enforced. That would be effective to a point, but you cannot predict, especially in today's day and age, in today's disintegrating society. You can't predict who's going to go off the deep end and when. You can't predict who's going to be triggered by a traumatic event in their life, or changes in their mental state organically.
Correct. Correct. The most straight person, the most honest, upstanding, perfect citizen in the whole United States could one day have a set of circumstances happen where he goes off the deep end and he goes ballistic. Yeah. So who is going to say who's okay and who's not okay? This is a danger.
The reason I'm bringing this up is the argument for tighter, more thorough background checks, even though that'll only go so far because you can't predict ahead of time. But
look, I'm not against something like that. Try to tighten
the loopholes now in the background checks. Would you agree with that?
That there are loopholes?
Tighten up, close the loopholes as much as possible.
At the point it is now, we are way beyond shall not be infringed. We're already way deep into infringement and then some. And what you're saying is you want more of that. Now, is that you speaking or is that the government speaking? And who's actually wanting this disarmament or restrictions to people having weapons?
I understand your argument that the government may be looking for any excuse to tighten control so much that eventually they confiscate weapons. I understand that argument. I understand the genuine danger of that. But that's one extreme. This is another extreme, whether there should be no limitations on what kind of weapons you get, and no attempt to tighten at least background checks, even though there's limits to their effectiveness.
All right, well, let me give it as an answer of part A and part B. Part A is when you say shall not be infringed, we're talking about a right here. A right is something that is inherent to the people, that is not given by the government. The government does not give this. It's a God-given right, or if for whatever reason you don't like the word God, then call it a natural right. Call it whatever you want, but it's inherent to the people. So the people have the right to own weapons. We don't have to ask the government anything. This is the way it was set up. Actually, the only reason the Second Amendment is even written down and put into the Bill of Rights is to tell the government what they cannot touch. It's to remind the government what they cannot touch.
All right,
that's
what about
part A. Wait a minute, part A. Part B is you want restrictions. Okay, I can understand some restrictions. I can't say I can go for them because they are abused. They're abused to the max. You clean up the corruption in government first. You clean up this quote-unquote New World Order thing, and then maybe we'll come back and talk about it. Until then, I think economics of a person going to work 9 to 5 is not going to be able to build up enough money to get X, Y, and Z. And as far as background checks to weed out bad people, that could be way abused. As a matter of fact, it is being abused. And his due process red flag laws that Trump even said that he's going to go against, let's take the guns first and then let's go to court. No, that's ridiculous.
Getting back to the foundation of all this, the Second Amendment, the framers of the Constitution, what about the argument that a well-regulated militia meant in those days government control or government supervision?
That's not what it meant. That's what a lot of people think it's meant because the word regulated has been, bastardized over the years. And the word regulated nowadays, because everybody's so used to the government crawling up their backside, now means that the government has some sort of a hold or an insight or structuring. The government structures something and restricts it and stuff like that. That's what people think now. What well-regulated meant way back then when it was written was that the people would be well-regulated, meaning they would be well-supplied, well-trained, well-ready to go, have enough weapons, ammunition, training, learning how to use them, and stuff like that go and be able to fight.
By who? Trained by who?
By whoever trains. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter by who. It could be a private contractor, could be the government.
So that didn't imply the government's hand in it back then, you said.
As far as I know, no. No, it implied that the people should have enough weapons of a good variety and enough ammunition and enough training to use them well.
What about the argument that, this trend now that, especially with this church shooting, which seems to reinforce the NRA's bumper sticker
the guy with a gun?
That when guns are outlawed, only outlaws will have guns. I agree with that. I agree with that. But with these latest shootings, and especially the church shooting in Texas now reinforcing that, is there a danger of that leading generally, much more generally, to a Wild West mentality where you're going to get civilians caught in crossfires, people are going to become trigger happy, another extreme developing out of that?
Well, they do say that an armed populace is also a very kind and I can't remember the word right now, but they're polite. If I know you have a gun and you know I have a gun, me and you probably are not going to escalate into a big bad argument. We're going to be kind of kind to each other and keep things on low because we're not going to want to escalate it. So there's an argument in that case too.
Kind of like the MAD doctrine on a local level, mutually assured destruction.
Yeah, more or less. Yeah, there you go. In the Wild West, quote unquote, all this Wild West stuff with shootouts on the street and we'll meet at noon and all this stuff. That stuff's all been hyped up by Hollywood. That never really happened. People used to carry guns, not to kill each other, but to protect themselves, to feed their families, etc. I mean, it was a common thing to have people having their own guns, carrying them everywhere. And there wasn't no problems back then with them. Why is there problems now?
So you think that's still workable in today's society?
Well, today's society is corrupted. The whole world is corrupted. You have to back off these tight-knit cities where they pack in 10 million people. There is tons of land around. Why aren't we still expanding? Why aren't new cities popping up? The city populations should not be where they're at. There's enough room to have moderate populations of cities.
Again, you're going off the main point here, point of contention.
You think so, but I'm telling you, I see a deeper version of it.
Until the cities are reconstituted into what you're saying, into a more suburbanized situation. Until then, which may take a while, you're okay with everybody carrying a gun?
Yes. Yeah. Who pulls first is going to win. So practice up.
I guess that's where it stands with Rabid Rack.
Well, this is a short interview. I'm still got argument left in me.
Okay, go ahead. I don't want to infringe on your First Amendment rights.
Let's go into the New World Order aspect of this. There is a cabal of very rich, very powerful people who have over time tried to disarm the world, and they've been successful at it. The place they have failed is the United States because of the written Second Amendment is a big, big obstruction to them. They can't seem to get past it. They're chipping away at it, and they're chipping away very well at it. They even got the pro-Second Amendment people capitulating to some of these things that they want. Let's do the background checks. What about mentally ill? What about drug addiction and alcohol addiction? Let's pull all these people off. Well, you start adding all this up, and eventually comes to about 80-90% of the population can't get guns from other restrictions.
Do you think that people should be restricted from wearing masks to hide their true identity?
No, I think you should be wearing a mask to hide your true identity before we get overrun by the Chi-Coms and they come looking for you. And even having association with me.
Apparently you think they're looking for you, and that's why you're wearing a mask.
I'm wearing a mask for a whole bunch of reasons. One, I don't want to be noticed out in public. I don't want some libtard to come up and stab me in the back when I'm eating lunch somewhere. So there's a whole bunch of reasons for it. I don't need the aggravation or the headaches, and my relatives that are close to me don't need those aggravations and headaches yet. However, there may be a point, if I'm making money off of YouTube videos or whatever, if I ever actually turn this into a career, the mask will come off and I'll be me. But until that day, why stick my neck out?
How does making money equate to you taking the mask off?
Well, same reason making money for, say, a politician allows them to afford security. Or a football star or Hollywood star for that matter. They have 10 armed men around them. They might not carry a gun themselves, but they have 10 men around them with guns all ready to go. So until I get to a point where I can keep my family safe, then there's no reason for me to stick my neck out.
Rabid Rack.
No, I ain't done. Let's hit this.
Okay.
Let's hit this New World Order thing. Now, me and you had a discussion once before about the New World Order. The New World Order is, again, a cabal of very powerful, very rich people trying to take over the world. And one of the things that was in the way for a long time was that the populace of many countries was armed. They worked on England. There was a mass shooting out in England. I don't remember the date. Go look it up. It was the Dunblane massacre, and it happened, I think, in Scotland or something like that. But all of UK then had to examine the laws because of this Dunblane massacre, and they took the guns away from the UK, and now the UK is restricted and stuff like that. 1 month later, they had a Port Arthur massacre in Australia, where X number of tens of people got killed, and everybody was up in arms. And of course, they had to take the guns away from Australia. So you have England going down, Australia going down, and recently you had Christchurch, New Zealand, broadcast live for everybody to see this horrible massacre. And then what happened? Immediately after that, the guns were taken. This is a cookie cutter method for the New World Order to impose its will upon people. The New World Order is at war with the populace. The populace don't know this. And it's a great way to have war when your enemy doesn't know that you're beating them up. So they send out an operation. They kill a few people. The populace goes, oh, take our guns, please, please take our guns. And this is how they depopulate the world. They've tried it in England, Australia, New Zealand, I'm sure other places. And now they're trying it here in the United States. There's a meme online that has one of the presidents, I won't say who, standing there saying, how many times are we going to have to pull a false flag shooting attack for you to give us your guns? And so what I'm saying is, if there is this war, and I'm saying that there is, against the populace of the world, including America, it ain't no big deal for the New World Order to kill 20, 30, 40 people so that the entire 370 million people of the United States will stand up and say, please, take our guns. Yeah, we don't want them anymore.
What about the argument that handguns and rifles and shotguns, conventional weapons that are now prevalent in society and legal, they're no match against the forces of a official trained U.S. Army, SWAT teams, advanced weaponry?
I don't know what the exact numbers are, but let's just take the United States. The United States has a military of maybe, I don't know, 200,000. I don't know. Somebody has to look up the exact numbers, but let's say it's that. Well, the populace that's armed is like 370 million or something like that. Well, I wouldn't say that much, but closer to 200 million people are armed in America. So even though the parity of their technology is higher, the parity of our numbers are higher. And don't forget, this ain't only about the United States people against the United States government. It doesn't have to be that way. What it also can be is China, Russia hooking up. China, Russia, North Korea, the UN, all coming after the United States. What are the people going to do? I mean, the military is not going to be able to handle such an overwhelming situation like that. If the people are not armed, the people are going to fall to the will of the Chinese, the UN, Russia, whoever. It is a prudent idea for the populace to be armed. And I'll give you this as an example of that. Switzerland, is it in Switzerland or Sweden? One of those two have their entire populace armed and trained to know how to use the weapons, and nobody messes with them.
Well, they're also, I think you're referring to Sweden. That they're not in the mix of contention and neutral countries, but I understand the analogy that you're making. Just wrapping it up now, if we could, for this segment.
All right.
How close do you think we are to the New World Order imposing itself on us and possibly the world?
I've seen reports that the UN has already okayed an attack by Russia and by China teaming up against the United States for this coming 2020. The UN has already okayed this.
And what are the reports? What's the sources of those reports?
For me, it's Lisa Haven. Wherever Lisa Haven gets her information, that's on her. So look her up for right now and then see if it's legit or not. Whether it is legit or not, I'm telling you that this is the goal. Eventual goal is to disarm America. And if they can't, they're just going to try it anyway, I think. But what they would much rather have America disarmed so that there cannot be no uprisings and take-backs of cities once they're taken.
On that note, we will end this segment of the debate between Larry and Rabid Rack of RackAttackGamer.
Well, if you're going to give me that Libtard Larry, it's going to be.
Thank you.
See ya.